Hey, there it is. We're back at this thing, right? Me, you, it's us. Look at us right now. Hey, it's Brian Campbell coming at you with another edition of Campbell's Rambles here on the Brian Campbell Experience. My opportunity for 2 hours a week to speak in long, exaggerated circles when asked very basic questions, and your chance to get your voice heard. So that's what we're going to do once again. Thank you so much for joining me here Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. This is the night before Halloween. What did they call that? Mischief night back in the 90s? I don't know. Is that still a thing now? Are we still going to toilet paper our neighbor's tree? I don't know. I mean, what are we doing here, folks? But I'm happy to be back with you. Shout out once again to Boston Scally for the headwear. You can check on their website. Get yourself one of those Chuck Mindenhall Man and the Myth hats right there. That's what I'm talking about. But boy, I'm just fired up to be back with you guys in front of this microphone, speaking on the topics that you want to speak on, and inevitably losing track of where I am in the topic and the question, and just talking to myself in circles. That's what we do here. But thank you. Please like, subscribe if you're into this type of stuff. If you get down with the BCX, okay, then tell a friend, right? Tell an enemy, actually, right? We'll take them hate clicks. Or maybe not. Just so happy to be back. Happy to see you guys liking what we're putting out lately. Appreciate that. A little update on the old BCX channel. If you haven't caught it already, you're damn right, Dave Sandine. Thank you very much for getting my back on that. Mischief night is back. Just don't do that mischief at my house, all right? Or I'm coming for you. But the channel updates this week. We got some boxing interviews with Oshaki Foster, who's back in a big rematch this Saturday on ESPN Plus and Top Rank against Robson Conceição after their robbery a few months back. So it's going to be an interesting bout for the 130 title. Got a very good chat with Keyshawn Davis, who he wants smoke. He wants Tank Davis. He wants Davis versus Davis. But he's fired up for his return in a few weeks in Norfolk, honoring the late Pernell Whitaker. All three Davis brothers on that card. It's a great clip. Check out that interview. And I just concluded, by the way, got myself some time with the Black Beast. Shout out to Shaq Majori for hooking me up. Derek Lewis is going to be on the channel. It wasn't a typical BC and Black Beast dance like we've done in the past on Morning Combat. This man, Derek Lewis, was a man of less words than normal, but I tried hard. I was like trying to do dental surgery. I was trying to put a crown on that filling there. But check that out, and we'll be back with another wellness check tomorrow with well, if you're an MK fan, it's a notorious guest. The notorious Jason Aaron will be stopping by the channel to talk about a lot of weird stuff. So if you're weird or if you like weird things, check that out. So thank you very much. Got a few topics to hit and discuss before we get into your questions at about 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Wow, thank you. So look at Alan W. just right on top of it. I mean, this guy's loyal as ish. He's saying we need the One Love hat and Reggie Jackson. So the One Love hat is here. I can bring it back in rotation for you if you're interested. And the great Reggie Jackson, he'll be here. He's doing Reggie Jackson stuff, Mr. October, right? He's got 2 days left in the month. He'll be knocking on this door sooner or later. So Wongman Alan W, the MVP of this chat, along with Lazy Bed and Tacoma Aroma. I feel you guys coming on lately. Thank you for that. Super chat is open if you feel generous enough to contribute. Thank you so much. No obligations. We're going to talk in circles regardless, okay? That's what I do there. And, Lazy Bed, I get down with you. So you sent BC some of your pool water for his mug, Dave Sandy. This is AG1, okay? This is Athletic Greens. It hasn't been disproven in my palate yet. Still works, all right? Still makes me feel great with that tropical taste. Basically, I'm just running out the supply I got left, okay? But I enjoy it. I do. I'm not going to let you talk bad about it like it's some Lord or Leard scam, because it ain't. There's some vitamins and stuff in here, I think. All right. Hey, let's hit a couple topics before we get going. But first, another reminder that Morning Combat, you better believe we're back on Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Our remote Friday series will continue as we set the stage for you this weekend for UFC Edmonton. We hit the latest news and notes. UFC Edmonton's look sneaky good card, by the way. Fired up for that. We'll hit the latest scene and maybe take your fan subs and am dead wrong. So if you got any of them, please get on over to morningcombat@gmail.com. Help out the scene of what's going on there. MK Fridays, me, LT, and the LIL, Long Island Luke Nocita. The dream team right there. Okay. There you go. There you go. Hey, let's hit it off with the top. I want to bring it back up. Okay. I want to talk about it. The more I think about it, the more I play with the matchup. You got to play with the bag a little bit. The more I play with the matchup, the fight I want to see most in mixed martial arts without question is still Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria after what we learned and saw at UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. Everything I said on Monday on MK and Luke said, it's right. We naturally have to say we don't want this fight right now because it kind of goes against the grain of the things we're trying to get away from. Every time a champion wins, it's like he wants to become a chap and move up. Everyone wants to do the Cejudo, right? Everybody wants to fast track themselves to legendary status, although that's not a jab at Henry Cejudo. He's got the wins in the resume where it stands up. I'm not trying to facilitate that, just like I'm not trying to facilitate necessarily that the great pound-for-pound king Islam Makhachev would only be fighting 135, 145ers moving up. I'm not trying to get there either. But try and act like Toronto 95. I see you. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying right here. It comes down to fandom, though. It comes down to Topuria. Unless we were Luke Thomas and we already had one of those from here to Hanover, Ohio, you know what I'm saying? We were already endowed largely at this man. For some of us, it was, okay, show me. Was the Volk fight an asterisk fight or just the perfect performance? Or can you do it again against another top 10 pound-for-pound guy, another living legend? Well, he did. He blew Max Holloway away after a close fight. Moving up, by the way, on my pound-for-pound list on CBSSports.com, for whatever this is worth, to number 2 overall. And it wasn't an easy vote, but I've got Makhachev 1, Topuria 2, Alex Pereira 3, John Jones 4 at the moment. It was such a breakthrough performance and such a breakthrough year that you had that rare feeling you have when a UFC main event ends by stoppage, by some sort of finish, and it's just so absolute. It's so concise and clear, where you're like, Topuria is way better than I thought he was, because never would I have guessed he's going to do that to Max in that way. So naturally, you want to see, how great is this guy really? And maybe I'm too caught up on the idea that in this era, UFC isn't as aggressively building stars. And it's not like I'm suddenly Topuria fanboy. Believe me, I just have a lot of respect for who he is and what he's done of late, which we all should. But I want to see how great he is. I want to see how big that star can get. I want to see if they can get a big fight in Spain. I want to see if even in this era where UFC isn't aggressively looking lustily to build the next star, that this guy just broke through that mold and can be everything, can be the face of the franchise. Well, what else would you want to see than have him go in there against the best fighter in the world, especially when he's claiming already and saying, I'll be the first to submit said best fighter in the world. So should we see it next? No, I do not think for either fighter we should see it next. But if we're under the belief that UFC could be getting into Spain in the second half of 2025, and it would be a big deal, especially if it was, I get what Luke's saying about Madrid and Barcelona and the difference there and all that, but just getting on Spanish soil, doing a big event with a adopted home native there in Topuria, who's, friends with every soccer player. Could you make a bigger fight for that type of setup than him against Makhachev, making Islam be a road warrior again, right? Like when he went to Australia and did that to Volkanovski. I just think when you've got opportunities to figure out who the best fighter in the world is pound for pound in a cage, you're going to try to exhaust options to try to see, is it worth it to do this? Will it ruin both divisions if we try to, press pause on the current title formation and bring them together? When it's done gratuitously, I don't love it. And while we can argue that this would be gratuitously, let me play it out like this. Let's save this for the second half of 25, but let's build toward it. So in the meantime, what do I need? I need Islam Makhachev, who's, unless he shocks us, he's going to fight just once in 2024, which I don't love. I don't love when any top champion, especially a guy who's the pound for pound king, only makes it into the cage for whatever reason one time. But let's say he opens up 25 in the first 2 months and gives that rematch to Sarukian. And that's a great pay-per-view main event and a great. But let's say he wins that. Are we going out of our way clamoring, saying there's this long list of lightweights who undoubtedly have next? I don't necessarily know that to be true. And we do need to kind of figure out things in the bottleneck at featherweight just the same, whether that means Volkanovski and Diego Lopez end up fighting in February in Sydney, and whether UFC puts a largely unnecessary interim title on there, something that I would have greatly, let's do it, Street, just not actually physically. Okay, let's just, we'll meant Tui, let's go, let's do it. I used to be much more angry and against the real bastardization of the interim title that the UFC has done in years, and no night was a greater example of that on paper than my favorite night in MMA history, UFC 236, Atlanta 2019, where the main and co-main event had unnecessary interim title bouts when the champions were relatively healthy and in schedule, and you're kind of just doing it to make the fights feel bigger and better. And I don't want to say Dana is right, because if you employ that strategy too long, you're going to have a lot of historically meaningless interim champions who are able to claim that they were once UFC champions, just like we're calling everyone a UFC Hall of Famer just because they had a fight get into the UFC Hall of Fame, something I'm a big stickler against. But in this case, in that case, 236, not only did we see the greatest co-main and main back-to-back combo that we've maybe ever seen in modern pay-per-view history, I kind of have to side with Dana on that maybe the interim title in both cases elevated those fights to be crazier than they should have been, to be more wild, to have the fighters take more chances. So that did change me, where I'm not going to be the guy standing on the corner holding up the sign saying, you're bastardizing our championship. Stop turning UFC into boxing. If we have to go that route, if Topuria wants a little bit of time off and those two fight each other in February, well, can we get a quick spring turnaround for the winner? Is that possible? I mean, Volkanovski's game, he doesn't even regret what happened taking the two fights on relatively short notice, suffering back-to-back knockout losses. I saw his recent interview. Thought his response was great. He's like, that's why I'm great, because I do stuff like that. I could see him, should he get by Diego Lopez without getting beat up, making a quick turnaround, just like Diego Lopez being a huge opportunist. Let's say they make that fight and he wins that. Could you turn that around? Could you get Topuria back into the cage, not in Spain in the spring against the winner of that? I think you could, and I think you would keep the chains moving in the division in that regard. But what about the second half of the year? The reason why I'm into this is, one, because I think it's the best fight you can make in the UFC. And the only thing I'd put above that is if Ngannou versus Jones could be made, especially under this setting of Ngannou not being in the UFC. If you did some stupid, ridiculous crossover, two promoters, big football stadium, I mean, look, we'd all get down to the grandois of it. Is that even the right word, or a word in general? You have to be the judge of Luke Thomas's dictionary in that regard. But that would be so grand, and it would be heavyweights, and it would be legacy and generational, and it'd be the most dangerous heavyweight ever against the greatest fighter ever. I mean, that's the biggest fight in reality you can make in UFC. Jones, Aspinall up there too, but not on the level of what this is. Makhachev versus Topuria, two guys that are just, in that one night, you're going to find out who's the best fighter in the world. Can we build to that in 2025? Well, if you've got trepidations based on the things I said opening up, of those tropes that we're trying to get away from, do I want Islam to have all these fights against light featherweights moving up? No. But it just so happened that what we're talking about, all these fights, is really just two fights against Volkanovski, who was the #1 fighter in the world and damn near almost beat Islam the first time. So I'm not looking at that as some negative. And if we're looking at the idea of a featherweight moving up to face the great and mighty Makhachev, well, Topuria brings a lot more danger than Volkanovski. Well, much more danger in the idea of being able to finish the fight even against a larger man. So that's automatically, to me, an even better fight in a lot of cases, without disrespecting Volkanovski, than the two we saw of what they look like on paper between Makhachev versus Volkanovski. And they both played out exciting, and just in completely different ways. So what if we frame it like this? What they're doing in the extended coaching tree of the late, great Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, with Khabib, the retired former champion, now sort of the, heir to the throne of the great factory of Dagestan fighters that have all trained under his dad. They're talking about, they tend to move quickly, meaning Khabib could feel Islam coming up, and Khabib already had that preset, hey, I'm going to honor my dad's wishes and not, hang on too long. So when he stepped away, it wasn't just to honor mother and father. It was, well, hey, Islam's ready and he's coming up and he's part of this team. And what is so great about Khabib, in my opinion, I think there's a lot of things that are great about Khabib's character. Look, I don't know day to day what choices he's making or what he believes in. And if I can get on a soapbox and be on the opposite of that, maybe, sure, possibly. But in terms of how he's acted as a sort of this comedic badass superstar and the honor code that he lives by, I can certainly respect the idea that in that tree, they're about team more than they are about individuals. I mean, Khabib is showing you that walking away while he's still on top. He could have milked a ton more in theory, right? Could have milked a bunch more of these title defense. I mean, he's absolutely dominating the peak names that he ultimately did get in there against. But yet he said, no, this guy's coming. I want him to have his moment. It's more about father and what we've built here. Well, that's about to happen with Usman Nurmagomedov, who's fighting largely in no man's land right now with PFL and, not even getting the push because PFL doesn't have one belt. They've got seemingly 4 or 5 now. So it's not like he's even getting this individual push in the second biggest organization. He's just sort of lingering, fighting in Europe in no man's land. Or I guess he fought in San Diego recently. But they're already publicly talking, Usman is, and saying, within the next 2 years, you're going to see me in the UFC, and it's going to be perfect timing as Islam moves up. And because Islam's been talking about moving up to middleweight for a while. And Usman comes in and in theory would work his way in and get a chance to fight for that lightweight title and continue on in that lineage of Abdul Manap's students who have done that. So, like, how many more names at lightweight is there actually left for Makhachev to fight, especially under this scenario if he got through Saryukin? Obviously, a lot of what ifs here, but I'm doing big picture, UFC boardroom mapping the booking the territory a year in advance. What if he got that Saryukin win? And what if the Topuria fight, especially if Topuria defended that title one more time for 2 title defenses, what if that became a really big deal, which at that point it undoubtedly would, because Topuria's star is skyrocketing. I don't know if necessarily we're going to label that as another 145 or moving up. That'd be another title defense opportunity for Makhachev. I think it would also potentially be like, what else would there be for him to prove at lightweight? Go up to middleweight, chase your true dreams, but after this fight. So if he has the potential to already be wanting to move up anyway to open up the door for Usman to come in, that does seem like good time on that regard and good timing. And the fact that you're not doing it right now for Ilya means you're not just like rushing him gratuitously, lustily, as like, we just want to make him a star, which is kind of, some moves were made like that immediately after Conor went away at the end of 2016. I believe that. I believe Darren Till got this massive, huge push of like, we got to just try to get who's next in line. Let's just push it up. The model is different right now, but Topuria breaks the model. He's a star in the old model. He's a star in the new model because he's advancing territories for UFC. Like, we're playing Risk. This fight right here, next year at this time, let's build toward it. Let's make it second half. Let's make it second half. It's still a 2-fight year for Topuria, giving him time. Or obviously he could come back against one of those 2 names earlier this year, meaning Volkanovski or Lopez, if that was how it worked out. Either way, are you going to tell me? Because I saw some people say, well, BC, hey, cool, getting excited about that fight. But there's no need for it. And none of us are really clamoring for it, meaning us collectively as the MMA fan base. We will be. And why wouldn't we? I mean, that's one of my favorite things in boxing ever. And we've seen it a couple of times in MMA too, but when you get the, because pound for pound is what it is. Either you give it no value or you're like me and you say, in some ways it's the ultimate value. I know it's subjective and there's a lot of debate in there and it fills podcast hours times, but it's ultimately the true currency of who's better than whom under this criteria, which isn't a perfect science. And a lot of people are using a criteria, which in my opinion is off in terms of how you really should be doing it. Just like they might look at my criteria and say the same thing. It's a big gray area, but what's the best way to punch a hole in that gray area? The rare times that the pound for pound grades can fight one another, right? That's why we get so excited for Fury versus Usyk, Beterbiev versus Bivol. Now, those, neither of those were 1 versus 2, but when 1 versus 2 happens, Mayweather, Pacquiao, Andre Ward, Sergey Kovalev won. That's the best times in combat sports. That's when you're undoubtedly the best are facing the best, and we're going to find out who's the best of this divisions era, of this era at large. Makhachev versus Topuria, if things continue this way, that's the fight, man. That's the fight. And it suspends sort of my journalistic mind and just goes straight to my fan mind and says, I just want to see who wins. I just want to see who's the better man. I just want to see what that ish looks like. So there you go. There you go. That's my topic number 1. Let's not dismiss that. All right. Let's not do that. Let's get behind it. Let's push for it. Let's build toward it, because I want that more than anything but Jones and Ngannou. That's the truth. That's how I get down. All right. I get down with AG1 too. Topic number 2. Do you care? I care. Rose Namajunas is back. Look, if Luke's going to be able to dress up like Mario, and that was hilarious on Monday. Shout out to Luke. I mean, he was he had his finger in the wound and was just spinning it and all of us, but he did it with a smile. If he's able to proclaim and walk around that, this year Adesanya is my favorite toy, but no, let's throw him in the bin because now I'm a Topuria guy, right? I'm a Rose guy. Just such a compelling fighter. And 2-fight win streak now, 3 fights into her move up to 125. And we're still trying to figure out, like, name-wise alone, and obviously on a 2-fight win streak, she's really close to a title shot. But is she as good? Is she as dangerous? Is she as much of a threat to the title at 125 that she is 115? It's been interesting to watch, as is the coinciding storyline of Trevor Whitman no longer being in her corner. So she's back, just to fill in the blanks here. Co-main event Saturday in Edmonton, originally the main event. Then we subbed in Moreno versus Arbys. So now this card, right, which also has Derek Lewis on it, it's getting interesting. And the matchup here in the co-main event, Rose versus Erin Blanchfield, to me is very interesting in so many ways. Blanchfield looking like this absolute hammer of the month and dominating until Manon Fiorot like seriously humanized her and disciplined her. But after that run, she's not going to be that far out, even with this division arguably having the best depth of any of the UFC women's divisions at the moment. And Rose, like I said, especially if she extends this to the win streak to 3, we're talking not if, but when for the title. But here's what's interesting. Rose sat down with Shaquille Majori of CBS Sports, my friend, my partner in crime at times in Morning Combat and on this channel and on his own Shaq MMA. And Rose said a few things to him that I thought were interesting. Number one, he did bring up hey, like you mentioned in the past that one day you're going to go public with the why of why you and Trevor Whitman aren't together, right? For it was part-time for a little bit. Now it's no time, it seems. And she didn't fully answer it, but she did tell Shaq, I'm praying for him constantly. And I do wonder if it ties in because he asked her another question earlier about sort of big changes she's made to her plan of attack, her camp, her mindset, and all this. And a lot of it, she explained, was aligning with her spiritual principles. So does that also lump Trevor into that topic? And I don't know. No one knows, but she wouldn't give that breakdown. But, I think it's certainly at face value a downgrade when she carries on without him because of how sharp her striking became under him and her game planning and her, her evolving into that complete well-rounded threat. Obviously, the intrigue on Rose is also the mercurial nature of you kind of don't know what you're going to get sometimes from fight to fight. That I think only is exasperated in the post era without that head coach. Obviously, she still got Pat Barry in her corner. But one of the things she told Shaq was, I don't think a win here should get me a title shot under the idea of competitive meritocracy because of the respect she has that she went head to head with Fiorot and Fiorot beat her. Now, Rose was injured, was making her 125 debut. There were elements to that. It was competitive, but it was a clear loss. So I can respect that. But no doubt a win here for Rose of almost any kind is going to put her in contention in a step away. I mean, would she have to go through somebody like a Grasso coming off of a title loss to get there? It would have to see how the schedule would play out and what the UFC would plan and want to do. Heck, she's got to get through Blanchfield first. But that's what makes this matchup so interesting, the style contrast. Even though we're 3 fights into the flyweight experiment of Rose, trying to figure out, like I said, has she figured out how to fight at this weight class completely? There's a lot going on there. She did use wrestling a lot more in defeating Tracy Cortez, but now she's going in there against in some cases, a one-dimensional dominant grappler in Erin Blanchfield. If Rose can keep her back off the canvas, can she piece her up on the feet? It's going to be a very interesting fight to see how this plays out. But Rose ain't done yet. She's not done competing for big fights. And it's going to be, it's one of the most remarkable careers. Her record now is like 13-6. Remember at one point she was like something like 9-6, something like 7-5 as a champion. I mean, she's had as weird and up and down a career as you can imagine, but not done yet, figuring herself out at this weight class. And for everything that I get, there's probably going to be a lot of you going, cool, BC, that you're a big Rose guy, but like, who cares about this fight? And who cares about women's MMA? And I hope we're not completely there just because of how bad things have been of late, particularly the 135 division and those 2 fights we saw in that Salt Lake City card and everything surrounding there. Now that division is going to get more life now that Kayla has survived in advance, and she's going to fight Juliana, and at least there'll be trash talk and intrigue on the buildup. But the collective quality of fighting across the board in this era of women's UFC has not been overly great. But I think this fight brings a lot of greatness to the table. We'll see if Erin Blanchfield mentally can bounce back. We'll see how much she's worked on her striking in between. So I hope that stain doesn't come onto this fight too, and people's expectations that it's going to be awful. But that also doesn't mean it might not end up being awful. I mean, you know, I watched Rose versus Carla too for the title and still can't explain it. So it does happen, but of what we have left of what I would consider great women's MMA, I consider this fight in that. So, hey, let's do that on Saturday. Also, quick aside to throw in here on topic 2, I saw that clip real quick of DDP, Dricus du Plessis, the middleweight champion who sat down with Radio Raps for some type of chat in a pub there. And interesting, he said that in regards to who he would fight next, he said Khamzat Chimaev gets him much more excited than Sean Strickland. The exact quote from du Plessis was, "I've beaten Strickland before, and I know I'll beat him again." And ultimately, he said, look, the fight the world thinks is the best for my next fight is the one I want. And in his eyes, the fans are really clamoring, as they should, for Khamzat after running through Robert Whittaker last weekend in a way few of us could have predicted. I kind of like that out of DDP. I don't think he's saying indirectly that I had that really close fight with Sean Strickland and I'm not 100% sure if I can beat him. So why don't we hold that off and go with this guy who, while dominant when he's completely in control, let's see what happens if he's not in control. I don't think he's necessarily saying that. I take him at his word there and saying, like, no, this excites me, this challenges me, because I think when you're at this level, you almost want as tough, the real ones almost want as tough and as dangerous a fight as possible. So because they know that that'll make the very best version of come out of them in training camp and on fight night. That's just my personal take. And so I'll take it at face value when he says, yeah, we'll do Sean again. We could do Sean again. I'll probably end up doing Sean again no matter what. But right now, let's ride the hot card. Let's get the unbeaten fighter in there, because as dominant as Khamzat is when that plan A goes perfectly to plan, we still have a lot of questions. That's what I love the most about this trope. The trope of somebody getting all the way to the title level without fully having explained to us how great they are, where their pitfalls are, where their trapdoors are. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, rightfully, most of the time that'll get exposed on the way up. If you don't have 5-round cardio, or if you're, wrestling is just not on the level of the rest of it. I love when we don't know. It's all like the Conor McGregor magic tour all the way to the top. I mean, even after he won one shot at Jose Aldo, we still didn't really know. I mean, remember the build of the Eddie fight? It's like, well, Eddie's just going to take him down. Okay. Then we're going to finally see. We didn't see it. So if you're going to play confidence game in DDP's head, you do have this understanding that, yes, if Khamzat takes me down like he did to Robert Whittaker in the first 14 seconds and just completely owns and dominates, it could go a one-way beating. But what does Khamzat look like in rounds 4 and 5? What did we learn from the Gilbert Burns fight? What did we learn from, other adventures? The Kamaru Usman fight, which was very competitive, particularly in that final round. So interesting stuff. I'm not always in this feeling of saying, hey, UFC matchmakers, like, F meritocracy, let's go full on casual super fight mode and play video game style and just pick these guys and make them. But these are happening to be on the come off of UFC 308. UFC 308 was not just so exciting in the cage, not just so exciting on paper, but the spin-off, the breakout moments, the conversations we've been having this week are still as intoxicating. And I just think, whether we're talking about Islam and Topuria, or in this case, Chimaev and DDP, it's like, man, these fights are so great and they're so ready now. Why wait? In fact, as Paula Cole once saying, I don't want to wait. You know what I'm saying? For I'm saying, like, she did have 2 babies, right? Finally, folks, my final point before we get to your live questions, if you're still out there. The Costco guys jumped the shark in a massive way a few nights ago. They went on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And I've been watching this from the beginning, from really from the beginning. And I got my kids into them, and we had this run where we was trading each other Costco Guys videos and doing, the same life cycle that we've all done of, like, who are these guys? I don't know why I like this, but it's good. And then it, quickly turns into, God, do they really only have 2 songs and 2 ideas and they're just going to milk those? And oh wait, that dad's got eyes like a serial killer, or what have you. And then the big expose video came out when they did that Chupapi Munino crossover collaboration, and you saw the dad AJ Bufumo kind of talking down to everybody and driving an iron ship in terms of how they execute and produce those videos. And then suddenly that led everybody to go, you know what? There's something evil about this family. I don't get it. But they made it this far. But here's the thing, though, in reality. Guess who they had to call when they finally climbed the mountain? Because I know AJ's got who was a former indie wrestler, and now he's making this sort of somewhat of a comeback, and he's got an AEW match coming up in November against QT Marshall. I guess you could argue that that's the mountaintop of where this could go for however long their viral internet fame will last. But does it really get any bigger than this nice show? I mean, guess who they had to call, though? They had to call the Rizzler to make it happen. And they had to give up the first chair next to Jimmy Fallon to the damn Rizzler, 8-year-old Christian Joseph from New Jersey, his own self, a separate viral internet sensation. The reality is, though, I'm a little bit worried about AJ and Big Justice, that they're running out of ideas, that they don't go anywhere higher than this, and they needed the Rizzler to get them there. And in reality, I think for any of us that are still watching, whether it's out of that grim sort of hate watch or it's out of that, there was a point in the inevitable life cycle. On Sunday. Thank you, Fuzzy Dunlop. Is that on the pay-per-view or the pre-show? Damn. In some way there was a time we just couldn't stop watching them. And there was a father-son wholesome bit for a bit, but then it just became 75% of our videos are just us doing this dance to our two ridiculously addictive and stupid theme songs. But every moment I've ever really loved about them, the Rizzler was involved. And you can almost see in their numbers that they spike with this guy. But we all have this uneasiness around the Rizzler because right now he's perfect. Some people tried to do this theory that he's really like a Hasbullah Abdu-Rozik and he's really in his 30s and he just looks no, the kid's in 4th grade. He's legitimately a young child, but he looks like an Italian mobster and he's got the gimmick down and he says decently funny things. And although you can make the same argument, by the way, if you look at his channel solo compared to the Costco Guys channel, you can almost argue that they do need each other comedically in a lot of ways. But yeah. I mean, you may not be into where I'm going here, so maybe I should wrap it up. Thank you, Perfect Speller. But the thing about the Rizzler is when Luke Thomas makes those jokes of oh, damn, this kid when he's 14 will definitely be smoking meth, or definitely be this. He might be right. I don't know where you go from here if you're that, kind of funny fat kid and then you're just going to grow up. It's like child star syndrome and you sort of grow out of your cuteness and then you're just some 15-year-old dork with a deep voice and everyone's saying, hey, do the Rizzler thing again. So I do have some reservations. I just can't believe the Costco Guys made it to this point. I can't believe I'm talking about them on my show today. There's a cringe level that we cannot stop watching. But I think now we're collectively just trying to watch long enough to eventually find out what is the major malfunction in AJ Bufumo and who did he kill and who knows where the bodies are buried. And then we can expose him. And maybe the Rizzler is the only one that does know. But I'll wrap this up out of fear and loathing for Las Vegas for all of you. Thank you so much there, guys. Those are my topics to start it off. Now we're going to transition and get into your topics after I get some of this green dream down. All right. Yeah, I mean, it may look gross, but it tastes beautiful. Just like my path to get here to this point right now in my life and career. Tastes beautiful now. Looked pretty gross along the way. All right, Mikey, hit me with something here. Let's hit him. Let's do it. I'm ready. Let's get surgical, okay? You down with this? Let's do it. All right, let's go. A. Franco. Hey, thank you so much for that generous donation. Sorry, that's a fruit fly. Those guys are relentless. You bring home a banana one time, you don't throw the banana peel away fast enough, and then they're all over you. All right. He wants to know, did you ever get the opportunity to meet, talk, work, hang out with the late, great Bert Sugar? Could you enlighten the donks on this legend? Great question, A. Franco, about somebody who it's hard to say Bert Sugar peaked too early on the idea that he's passed away and he's one of the all-time great observers, journalists, humorists, historians in boxing history. But his sense of humor and his jokes would have been great on modern day boxing Twitter, and if he had been younger and had some YouTube show like Morning Combat right now. I mean, that guy was so hilarious. And I know at the tail end of his life, he had that little skit, almost digital series with HBO where him and Kieran Mulvaney, for a lot of us, the first time we were like, who's this British dude? Who's this Mulvaney guy? The two of them together were magic, and they almost had a little of what I'm lamenting here about, Bert dying. I mean, I don't say he died too young because he lived a long and great life. I think he was in his 70s, but the idea that he came along just a little bit too early in that regard. But he was so known for so long, has coined so many of the sort of phrases, whether he coined them or he just, often repeated them, that I ultimately repeat today about my love for the sport. And did I ever get to meet him? Unfortunately, no. Was around him a few times in my early boxing days, like in Las Vegas for super fights, when you go into the media room and it's, buzz in the air and you sort of see him. But the stories that would get regaled to me from Kieran Mulvaney about the two of them, having a drink and hanging out, are just legendary and amazing. I thought what Bert did on that, do you remember that ESPN series? I can't remember the name of it, but Brian Kenny was the host, and they sat down at Gleason's gym in Brooklyn and almost did like a huge deep dive on like heavyweight history. And they had special guests in like Larry Holmes and George Foreman and all these people. And, Bert was one of those panelists on there and was just amazing and a dynamic storyteller, and always has the cigar unlit with the old, fedora sort of newspaper man hat. The jokes that Mulvaney still shares with me today from those times are great. That is a guy who I wish I could start my career all over and just have, hung out with him as much as possible, because he understood the game and the game's eccentricities and ridiculousness, but yet without changing his love for it, which is sort of the model I'm almost trying to do in my own fandom. Because if you don't think being a boxing fan is hard enough, right? Like that makes you want to run in the other direction every 3 or 4 years. Something's got to keep you there, some level of degeneracy or addictiveness to just the purity of the sport or whatever. And I always loved the way he sort of grasped that. Maybe that's why I gravitate to somebody like a Rafe Bartholomew, who I've been a colleague with forever. And now I'm so blessed and lucky to be back podcasting with on Inside the Box. Check out our episode from yesterday. He has that same irreverent style and thought. That's sort of all Bert to me. That's what he represents. A great mind in a great sport. And even though he lived a great life, gone too soon, would love to hear his thoughts today on Turkey Al Sheik and all these other things going on in boxing. So thank you very much, A. Franco. You're a decent guy. I appreciate you. Yeah, thank you. All right, let's keep this going right here. Lazy bed. Yeah. Well, yeah, you know what I mean? Shout out to Bert Sugar, but shout out to Burt Bacharach. And shout out to, ultimately the tribute that Bacharach got by Mike Myers and Austin Powers, one that, re-triggered a lot of album sales. One of the great songwriters in popular music history there, Burt Bacharach. So shout out to you. All right, here we go. This one's from, wow. I don't know what RSD is. I don't know if that's worth 250 shillings or 10 times that, but thank you, Matija Milanovic there. Appreciate you as always. Appreciate everybody on here. How do you rate Costco's hot dogs, price being a factor? It's a great question. I mean, this does fit directly into my wheelhouse. I am a Costco shopper, by the way, as well. I do frequent the New Britain location. Although, it's you could die there in some regards, or you could just spend half your day there trying to get out of that parking lot. The hot dogs are very good, but and the price point is key. But I do have a somewhat limited existence eating that horrible food, because I didn't become a Costco regular until the last 10 years. And, the last 4 or 5 have been trying to turn this black liver around. But a similar setup and gimmick pulled me in aggressively for about 10 years. You ever been to an IKEA, which, they have all over this country and spread apart in various areas? I did have this delivery job in about 2005, where I would go deliver like machine parts all over the Connecticut coast. And, you'd plan your deliveries around passing by the furniture store there, IKEA, because, they are the kings of luring you in for cheap food, similar to the Costco menu. And I don't know who was first or who stole, but, at that point it was like, you can get 2 hot dogs and a soda for like $1.50. I mean, there's something absolutely ridiculous, like just an aggressive deal that I would loot and abuse, to the point where it's like, I could almost be anywhere within like a 25-mile, area of that and think, well, I'm really not that far away from getting two ridiculously cheap and delicious hot dogs. So that mindset does cross over to a Costco's. I like IKEA's dogs better. Costco's dogs are absolutely solid. Most of their food is, gas station quality, but it's probably a little bit of an upgrade from that. And, it takes one to know one. And I know a lot of them, that type of food. Okay. So, but yeah, for the price point, if I wasn't as conscious, I would absolutely crush I try to rock that purple ice cream looking thing with the spoon on the Costco. That's been my allowance lately, passing through there. But I rate the Costco dogs pretty high, not as good as Cumberland Farms or 7-Eleven. All right. But really, what are we talking about right now? I mean, certainly some brands are better than ever in some places. I mean, there's a lot of legendary hot dog places in Connecticut, by the way. Al's Hot Dogs in Naugatuck, Connecticut just finally closed, but like Blackie's in Cheshire on the Waterbury line. I mean, there's so many, it's ridiculous in Connecticut I could name. These aren't on that level. That's almost like gourmet, in some ways. But there's some ballpark dogs. Obviously, I've never had a Dodger dog, never been to Dodger Stadium, but I did set an American League record in 2002 when I devoured 8 hot dogs outside of Yankee Stadium on the walk from like the parking lot to the I don't think that'll ever get beat, at least not by somebody with my bone density, like, you know what I'm saying? But we met another party there of people up in the upper deck, another group of people. And I remember there were females that upon hearing the news of my hot dog escapades were, visibly upset, like just physically upset from hearing that. That's a good hot dog. Alan W's jumping in and says the IKEA meatballs were made of horse meat here. They probably are. I mean, they're probably made out of dead bodies, to be very fair. Spoiler alert, Soylent Green is made out of people. All right. Hot dogs are the old, I mean, because, the more you try to find out about them, obviously, the more you regret that. And the more that, in that moment, for that day, for that hour, for that fleeting sense of feeling, you'll go, man, I'll never put that stuff in my body again. What am I doing? But at some point, you got to just sign off that it's in me. I grew up on these things. I don't want to know what's in there. Don't tell me. I don't care. If, in fact, you watched me enjoy 2 of them and then told me there was a dead human body in there, it may not even change how much I enjoy those 2. All right, so take that, Wong, man. That's the truth. What else you got here, Chin? Come on, let's do this. Let's keep this flowing here. I vowed to be quicker today. In and out, okay? Like a body puncher. Lazy Bed jumping in, my man. Turned down a St. Jude's donation for this super chat. Well, please don't ever do that, okay? Okay, because this is a grift. I'm not fully comfortable yet. I'm enjoying it. It puts a little money in my pocket. I appreciate all of you, but yeah, send that money. St. Jude's actually one of my probably the charity I'd send my stuff to first because of having been a parent in hospitals and the work that charities like that do are just incredible when you're going through it. Believe me. Dave Sandine saying, I got to start stealing from Salvation Army Santa to fund super chats. Yeah, only give it if you got it. Thank you very much. But it's these streets, these corners, you know what I mean? We're all bumping into each other now. I mean, this was Luke Thomas's corner, but if I can get a couple of shillings out of this and a good time and spread a good message to the people, that's all worth it. But frequent Luke on Thursday, frequent all of your tip your waitresses. That's all I'm saying to right to you. Back to the Wong man. Appreciate you, brother. Favorite boxing movies not named Rocky or in the Rocky universe. You are partial. He says he's partial to the Great White Hype, which is a commentary on the absurdity of boxing. The Great White Hype it kind of like holds up really well today because, as you said, it's such a perfect editorial commentary on the dark side of the sport, but done in a very comedic manner. Almost, but different. Like Blue Chips, 1994. Great basketball movie. Nick Nolte, Ed O'Neill, Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway. But we remember it because it had so many college basketball players and stars at the time. And it actually, in hindsight, like a bad but a decent acting performance from both Shaq and Penny. That movie in reality is the same thing. It's a indictment on college sports, and the cheating and the giving of money and all the dirtiness of donors and all that goes on behind the scenes. So the Great White Hype had that, but they also had the humor. They nailed a lot of those things. Was that Peter Berg in there? Longtime boxing guy, obviously. So what other boxing movies do I love? I used to watch that one with Rick Schroeder in it when his spoiler alert, when his dad dies at the end, and I used to cry along with him. He used to get so mad. He used to tell my dad, why would they allow a movie this sad to be out there, especially about boxing? Because what, after seeing my first Rocky movies, I wanted to see every movie ever made about boxing, and luckily, boxing is very well done in cinema. Aggressively well done throughout the history. What is that? What is that fight? What is that movie called? The one I'm talking about with Rick Schroeder. Why can I not think of it right now? Let me Google it for 1 second here. All right, The Champ, 1979's The Champ. John Voight. Maybe not the best movie ever, but it stood out. It was emotionally filling right there. I think we've gotten a lot of good ones from even of late. So aside from $1 Million Baby, which I could go 35 minutes on how much that movie was a unnecessary curveball in my life, and I got fooled by it and all that stuff. You can have all the awards it won. I don't want them at all. Loved The Fighter, obviously. Raging Bull is just different because it's so damn gritty and so just like dark and aggressive and a De Niro classic, a 70s classic in so many ways. But I thought Cinderella Man really overachieved when that came out about 20 years ago. I've always been a big fan of that movie. Meatballs 2 had that big boxing match at the end. Kidding. Was that me? Yeah, that was Meatballs 2, which was a really good bad 80s movie, by the way, but that had a funny boxing scene at the end. Those are probably my favorites. I'm trying to think of what am I missing? Great White Hype with, you know what one I think is kind of underrated? Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage with what the heck's her name with the black hair and I'm talking to myself like I'm talking to myself. All right, there you go. With the Italian name, who I'm talking about, centered around that boxing match that was fixed. Sneaky good boxing movie in that regard. Maybe not a boxing movie, but I mentioned this on the chat a few weeks ago. I caught back up with Judgment Night, the 1993 thriller, after having not seen it since sneaking into the movie theater freshman year of high school with Jeff Bogus. I remember that night. It was fantastic, and how that movie scared the crap out of us. They were on their way to a big boxing fight. But if you got a chance to check out that forgotten 90s classic with Cuba Gooding Jr., Emilio Estevez, and Dennis Leary as the evil drug lord there, check that one out. But yeah, Alan, what am I missing here? What am I missing out on in that regard? I don't know. What do you got for me, Juan? They're supposed to film that Jason 8 boxing scene at MSG, but they couldn't afford it. Interesting. You talking to me or talking to these other guys right here? You also got Chu Chang saying, yeah, Snake Eyes opening 15-minute shot is epic. To Brian De Palma doing his thing. Interesting. Marissa Tomei, no, I'm thinking of, I'll tell you right now. Probably some of the worst chatting I've ever done right here in terms of rambling here with y'all, but I found it. So Carla Gugino, back in the prime era, you know what I'm talking about there. Gary Sinise playing a dirtbag as normal in that, as usual. Pretty damn good stuff right there in terms of boxing movies. But, if you're talking about cinematic classics, you're going to go Raging Bull. Great White Hype really did sort of capture a lot of that fun while having a very interesting message about where boxing was at that point, and in a lot of ways still is. But again, that's why we hang with this damn thing. What else? Keep it coming here. What do we got here? Devin, thank you for playing ball here. Will Payton Talbott be a pay-per-view star in 3 years? So he's looking like he's got an it around him. He's got an it factor, a plus to his game, a panache, charisma on top of that. 3 years from now, how old is this fella right now? How many fights are we into this deal? We're definitely hesitant because of how many people we've fallen for in recent years. Tom Duquesnoy, right? How many people we've fallen for? I felt for the Korean Superboy many times. Okay, Payton's 26, 9-0, and we got 3 UFC fights and 1 Contender Series win under the belt so far. But the quality of competition that he's so quickly jumping into now, and then finishing all 3 of these opponents since making the UFC debut, yeah, it's 3 years is a lot can happen in 3 years. I'm going to say no. Pay-per-view star? Nah. Yeah, no, if he continues if he climbs the ladder really quickly and makes some noise, it is inevitable. And if you're fighting for the title, and if you win the title and defend it, you're kind of by proxy a pay-per-view star. Yeah, I could see that happening, but sometimes you get slowed for different reasons, injuries, losses. If there's an over-under, I might say a little bit after that, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it's going to happen way faster than I even imagined there. But tentatively circling him among these, younger newcomers as saying you get that feeling. We got that feeling about Hamza. We still have that feeling. We just haven't seen yet if he's going to cash that feeling out or if that thing's going to keep going. But I mean, is there anything better than that feeling when you've identified as a group, we've identified someone that could be plus special and that's why there are rare times when you have to break glass and let people leap to a title shot, not just before like I said, before they've proved whether they are that, but sometimes before they even earned it. It's rare. You know what I mean? Like Bo Nickel has such a reputation, but it's like not being active and not fighting. That would have been a guy who, after they had done the Dana White Contender Series twice, and after he had made, one or two resounding UFC debuts, if you wanted to do something crazy and put him right into direct contention right now, I wouldn't have hated it. Just like I wouldn't have hated Hamza coming off of that crazy 2020 where he fought like 3 times in a week and a half in 2 different divisions. I remember saying like this, it's rare, but if you got the opportunity, now would be the time. Throw him in there against Usman and let's find out. We never got there for him at welterweight, unfortunately. But Talbot's gonna have to prove it to us, but he's fun to see, indeed. All right, let's keep going faster here. BC's got you today. I got your back. What do you want to talk about? This is Tacoma Aroma. Guy doesn't fool around. He's just consistent every single time. If made commissioner for a day, what rule changes or adjustments to the modern NBA game would you make to improve quality of the product? Yeah, so the problem I have, as I've echoed a lot on here, and at the risk of sounding like an old guy sitting on my front porch talking about the old days, I get that. I recognize that today these guys are way more skilled. Just like you can watch, prime mid to late 90s games and then compare them to certain parts of the 80s, especially below those elite teams that were constantly in the finals every year. And just you see the differences in athlete just from that comparison. And the 80s, the guys were skinny, not even really taking, muscle building to any level of seriousness. And you see the evolution of athlete. Well, the evolution now compared to, my favorite era of sort of mid to late and early the entire 90s. It's ridiculous. You couldn't make a rotation these days unless, you can do all of those skills and make threes and, all this stuff. So a lot of my issues with today's game center upon things that aren't the fault of today's game. Almost to the idea that, like, to me, the sweet spot was prime mid 90s, although I acknowledge that by the end of the 90s, when defensive control took over and you had that run of low scoring games and people leading the league in scoring with only 29 points a game, right? There was that stretch where I understand why the NBA opened up the rules in the early to mid 2000s to get to pave the road to where we are today, where it's just a different game now. It's not as physical. Little guys can compete on a high level. Everyone not only needs to be able to make a three, like it's just a regular part of the game that we're going to shoot a three every other possession. And we're going to take really bad shots and count them as normal. But it's a track meet now, and it's aided by the rules, but it's also just the escalation of athletes and skills. But does that make it a better game? I'm still saying no. I'm still saying no, that I don't know if it's necessarily a better game to watch when everybody's almost like a 5-tool player, all 5 on the floor at one time. Now, that's not always true, but in a lot of ways it is. It's like what Don Nelson was ahead of the game and trying to do in the 90s of not putting out people by positions and just saying, we're going to put our 5 best athletes, and we may be undersized in this spot, but we'll look at these advantages we're going to have in these other areas. That's what the game is today. But everybody is just, when you watch like the clips that they put out, that the NBA puts out on YouTube, when you're killing time and you're listening to music or whatever, and you're just chilling, it's like, oh, top 100 plays from last year. Yeah, let's watch it. It's going to be fun. There are plays in like number 95 that you're like, that would have been the best play of the 90s. You know what I'm saying? So I think, I was talking to my friend Mark Alsdorf about it, and I think he nailed it. Why people my age have this like love for the 90s so much. It was the intersection between athleticism, evolution, and still a role-playing team game. When I go play, in my 40 and over old guy league, that I've been, I by the way, I downgraded. I didn't retire, but I downgraded to backup status. So they only call me when they need me. I got a busy schedule. I think that's better for me. We're playing 90s basketball in there. And it's not just because we're old and slow. It's just it's like, it's a different game. So it's fueled by the rule changes, but it is also just a product of the game being so escalated and evolved from the athleticism, from the skills of every player, that what rule changes would I make to today's game to appease the things I don't like about today's game? I don't know, because then I think you're really messing with the structure of the game. Do we need a wider court? Maybe not. I mean, the thing that probably changed the game for me more than ever were those rule changes, where they got rid of the hand check, where they opened up the lane, defensive 3 seconds. Oh, now you can play zone defense, to up to a certain degree. I mean, but it went away from the pure. I don't know why it had to be 80s and 90s and early 2000s NBA that you can only play man-to-man defense and not zone. What was that better? I don't know. When I look back, it was better. And it's not that zone is overly played today where like everybody's playing a version of, Jim Boeheim's 2-3. That's not the case. They're still largely playing man, but all these rule changes have aided in the increase in scoring in the game, made it more high flying and fun. Yeah, it builds better stars. You got these track shootout games. And really, if you're going to pull the tape in the Western Conference Elite games in the 80s, there's not a lot of defense going on there, and they're playing up and down anyway. So I'm grasping at straws to some degree, but I think that I could feel it when it was happening during those stretches in 04, 05, 06, 07. And you can see the instant impact of what those rule changes did, allowing somebody like Steve Nash to go from like, solid all-star to like back-to-back MVP in Mike D'Antoni's system and what he brought in there. And it was like so innovative, and you could do that suddenly with those rules. I wouldn't mess with the dimensions of the game because I wouldn't want to break the game and see where that goes. So maybe I think to answer you, Tacoma Aroma, I may just need to shut up because the evolution of the game has taken such, like when I play, an NBA video game with my kids, and there's like there's a bomb that's ticking. At what point will dad just walk out and quit and blame the AI in the game of just, not being realistic and cheating? Pretty soon, you're going to win money on that bet. But, when I'm playing my son, Chris, and, he's going to shoot a 3-pointer like every play down. And I'm like, dude, that's not real basketball. And then I'm like, well, I guess it is real basketball now. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm just old and I don't want to evolve. Maybe I'm just too in love with pick and roll and post up in the old, the old style of the game. So maybe it's not rule changes as much. I mean, I can't believe I'm into the WNBA for all the reasons I said a few weeks ago, where it almost feels like 90s NBA today. But, first and foremost, what would I do to really answer your question? I'd go back to what it was I'd allow more physicality on defense. I would not have it where it is now, where it's almost NFL like, where if a star gets hit, you're going to tack on all these crazy suspensions. I mean, when you go back and watch the 80s and 90s games, especially the true elite ones, the playoff ones, the intensity is so energetic and electric and almost dark at times. I mean, these teams hated each other. And maybe it's a cultural turn that also plays into, I don't love that everybody's all friendly now and everybody's all, load management and sitting out games and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of that I don't love. But first and foremost, I'd let you hand check. I'd bring back physicality. I'd bring back man-to-man defense. I'd make exactly those changes. So maybe those are the changes that I feel. Could you still have an up and down game with big 3-point shooting and flowing team ball movement? Yes. But maybe it's just a preference. I like a physical game, a post-up game. I like where the big man matters in that regard. We're not trying to put the big man out behind the 3-point line to open up the lane. So there you go. There's your long ramble for nothing. I don't even know if it made sense, but that's the passion I have for this. That's the spirit I bring to the show, to be very fair with you. Alex Grigg, appreciate you just as well, even in loonies. Thank you. Which would be more exciting? Islam Makhachev versus Shavkat-Rakhmonov. I'm going to assume for the welterweight title, if both, advance to that point, or Shavkat versus Chimaev. Wow. Because of the unknowns still in Chimaev, the same unknowns that I said I love about the idea of him sort of like cutting the line or getting to the title without us fully seeing him solved. it also, I think, would play against him in this scenario. It's aided, of course, by my belief that I don't know if he can make welterweight anymore. And it was sort of weird in that regard that they never got to a welterweight title shot. And that we had the unexplained Nate Diaz weight situation and all that. So I don't think he's going back down, but I think Islam's, he's the pound for pound king. He's a better fighter. He's a more all around fighter. To see Islam move up, which we know he wants to do, he wants to get a chance to become a two division champion and go up to welterweight. And, is it realistic to sort of gauge that Shavkat probably goes through Bilal in December? It's not automatic, but yeah, it's very realistic that happens. Then yeah, that suddenly becomes on that short list of one of the best fights you can make, along with what I tried to argue for both Ngannou Jones and then obviously Ilya versus Islam. If Shavkat becomes that dude that we, Luke Thomas and Lorosenko all believe that he ultimately will. Thank you, Joe Romero, texting me about Dodger dogs being next level. Appreciate that. Definitely. One day I'll check that out. Yeah, I want to see, can Islam deal with Shavkat striking? Does he take him down with ease? What, in what ways does Shavkat neutralize what Islam brings to the table? I want to see that more than the other matchup you mentioned. I don't know. Well, I mean, we're talking about that at welterweight. I got questions about it. Are we talking about Shavkat moving up at some point? I'm going to have questions about that. So give me that former matchup all day. And it's not even sneaky. That is one of the best fights you can make in this entire sport. That's where I'm at right now. They've worn me down with this match. I don't know if I've taken it personal. I probably shouldn't have, but they've worn me down this year, the UFC, with the extreme watered down matchmaking and how everything's been stretched out and all the complaints I make about certain big fights not feeling as big as they should and all that. Now I'm almost, without even realizing it, just lusting. What's the gnarliest fight you can make? I mean, that's who Dana trained us to be fair. That's what he built his reputation off of. I do want, like, I'd love to get a chat with Dana. Like, imagine we just did a sit down, BC and Dana, but let's say, he was going to answer truthfully on everything. That would be one of the things I would say. Like, are you still moved by some of these matchups? And do you still get that old fight fan fire? Sometimes that, that needs to be there, that video game matchmaking. Sometimes that does need to be there because it just injects something into the water. It, like when Luke goes into a pool, as he's told me, and just, and just pees, he'll pee in your pool, and you might too. And I might too. I'm not going to reveal though. I'm not going to let you know if that's the case. It's that, that could be a secret weapon I have in that regard. But do you exit there feeling warm and good about yourself? Probably. And if I aided in that, then maybe that's what this chat is. Me just peeing into this pool here on the BCX, and at least you guys got warmed up. You know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense? Probably not. But thank you, Alex. Give me that first fight over the second one. Indeed. I want to see Hamzat against the big boys now. He's a middleweight now. He's not a welterweight. And when he said that he's willing to fight Poatan, by the way, it just, my mind just goes like, what do these things look like? I don't know, because we don't really know who Chimaev is. But if he takes you down right away, and if things are going good, and if he's not sick with COVID, the guy's an absolute menace to the society there at 185 pounds. Two Chang sliding in. Appreciate you, dude. Are those PFL pay-per-view numbers real? Only 10,000. Yikes. Yeah, I don't know. And I, there's a lot of people who have long argued, especially in boxing, that any pay-per-view number you've ever heard may have never been real either. And they always point to the fact that, back when Showtime and HBO were the big ones, that, if they had a great pay-per-view, then those numbers come out right away. And if it was a pay-per-view like Mayweather Guerrero on Showtime, and the long joke I always have with Steven Espinoza, that, they said, we can't find him. We haven't seen him yet. We'll report him when we do, because it probably at that point fell right below whatever threshold they want. Promoters or networks would not go out of their way to advertise when they weren't. But then you had pay-per-view insiders that could get, Dave Meltzer types too, that can get you sort of the truth or some some semblance of the truth. I also think the streaming era has changed things. Like when they used to talk about pay-per-view buys in the American sense, and remember the big argument that Showtime and Dana had around Maymac, the argument meaning just, Dana was outspoken against elements of that promotion that he didn't love from the Showtime side. And then it led to, sort of the lingering issues that you still hear about today, him ripping Showtime, which isn't even here anymore. And, Conor ripping Espinoza. And, we always bring it up to Espinoza when Luke and I interview him as a joke and stuff. But I think some of the central tension in that, if I'm right, was the idea that boxing always looked at pay-per-view buys from a North American sense only, because that's who they were distributing to, the US and Canada through HBO and Showtime under traditional ways, using the pay-per-view providers, where it's different price points around the world. It's different, whatever. Now that's all kind of just coming together because everybody's doing their own streaming now, and you can access that around, so you can get different numbers. And, when I used to argue, so the central tension between Dana and Showtime that I'm trying to bring up is that I believe that, there were ways that Maymac eclipsed Maypac from 2 years earlier, but it was financial. It was the live gate, but it wasn't in the purity of North American pay-per-view buys. Mayweather Pacquiao slightly edged it. And I think Dana was upset that Showtime didn't agree to make the public narrative that this is the biggest fight in boxing history, because it's not apples to apples comparisons on pay-per-view boxing in the old model in North America compared to everywhere else. I mean, pay-per-views are much cheaper in the UK, for example, but that is changing now. So all that long-windedness to say, especially now, it's really hard to gauge whether anything's real in terms of pay-per-view numbers. But I also don't expect pay-per-views at all to do well. Like when you heard that rumor that Canelo and Berlanga did, 600,000, or 5 to 600. I'm even shocked in the streaming era, because that wasn't a fight outside of Canelo's presence that was overly asked for or clamored for or wanted. But it shows the power of Canelo's brand for sure. And I think Berlanga did his best to sell that fight also, and had the Puerto Rican side of the market as well. But if you're going to do 10,000, I mean, you would think even with illegal streaming being prominent, and even with this fight being in Saudi with Saudi money, and, which it means that they didn't have to bust their balls promoting it and spend all their money doing that. And then it had an afternoon start time. So that's also going to affect, sort of a traditional pay-per-view number. Even with all that said, if it only did 10K, it's like, I mean, I know it's not the UFC brand, but this Francis Ngannou coming back after a 3-year layoff in MMA, having just been knocked out cold in boxing, 10K is really bad. And if that's the case, and that's the actual pay-per-view number, to me, it only makes the victory lap we saw from Don Davis, and maybe it wasn't a victory lap. I mean, most of that was from Mike Heck's sort of town hall with him, which I, shout out to Mike over at MMA Fighting. It was timely. It was very well done. But, Don is talking up every metric that they, that they feel that they won that night with, and won not just that night, but the year, and trying to say that, look, we have proof. Look at the social numbers. This is the biggest fight card in MMA in 2024. I'd be ashamed if the pay-per-view numbers were that low to even try to argue that. And I'm not saying PFL can't come out and celebrate the successes that they did have with that event. I would hope. I mean, they got to have successes, or they're going to go out of business tomorrow, because they've been building toward that event. The idea that Francis would make his debut, and the idea that we have this thing in the MMA world that's coveted even outside of the UFC, that UFC fans wishes was in their promotion still. And that's the truth. But man, 10,000, even with all those limiting factors against them, that's rough. And maybe it doesn't matter to the PFL's financial setup if that card was paid for by Saudi and they have that big investment. But after a while, you have to start asking yourself, how is PFL making money? I mean, the TV deals, but I really hope for PFL that they come out swinging in a whole new way next year. I really hope they make massive changes. I really hope they give themselves the best chance possible to try to not be another Strikeforce, but play the role that Strikeforce ultimately played as a true competitor in some ways to UFC in terms of our attention on any given night. Yeah, in that regard. But, PFL doesn't even have that, right? It's one thing to have financial success or rating success, and sometimes it's just pop culture attention success. They got a lot of that with Francis involved, and they deserve that. They paid for that by signing him, but that's a really low number. It's a sad number. I hope they get their ish together, like literally put all of their assets together and take the biggest swing that they can. But you got to kind of have a lot of MMA people at the table to be heard. So I hope there'll be some changes there. Cause you want to see, you don't want to see people fall apart. You want competition as a fan. It's more fun. It's more exciting. It's more intriguing. Did you not live through the Monday Night Wars? It is what it is. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Alan's back. Big fan of the Wong. There we go. Is Alan a Costco guy? I don't really know. I don't really know if he is. I wouldn't judge him if he was, though. All right. I don't, I'm not trying to wear the Costco clothes as much as Rafe is shouting out Kirkland right there. I'm wearing the True Classic, okay? So comfortable, by the way. I know they're a sponsor on Morning Combat, but I know they're a sponsor on the UFC. So comfortable. Ellen wants to know, where do you see yourself in 5 years in your field? And what are you aspiring to? Wow. All right, Ellen. It's a great question. I appreciate your support. I got big dreams. I love the things that comes with big ambitions, of course. The money, big salaries, I guess the potential of fame, whatever that is to some degree. And then obviously what I can do with those benefits, which is, feed my family, help my kids go to college and have the lives and careers they deserve and, give my wife the best and all that. All that stuff's great. But like Tony Hinchcliffe without the racism, I'm also a hungry wolf at this point, and I'm a competitor. I want to be the best in the world at what I do. And I think the lane that I most am aiming to hope to one day say that is boxing broadcasting. I mean, that's what I want. I mean, I love writing, punditry, Morning Combat, CBS Sports HQ. I love it. This job is so fun. It's multifaceted. There's so many little elements and different roles to it, and they all have their own challenges and they're fun. But there ain't nothing like calling live boxing. Nothing. Ringside, dodging blood and sweat and tears. There ain't nothing like adding to the soundtrack of something you love and respect so much. And I've had some really, really good opportunities in the last few years, not just calling fights, time on Showbox, filling in on Showtime Championship. Ring City was so much fun for that year in NBC. Those cups of coffee with the Zone, calling Usyk Bellew, Friday Night Fights back in the day, early TV reps. It's all part of it. It all builds to it. It all adds to it. Interviewing in the ring in front of a crowded arena with the mic playing to the house on a pay-per-view. I mean, that's great. But there's nothing like sitting ringside and adding to that. And while I've had the right jobs on the build to sharpen my tools, to get more awareness, to get some opportunity, I want to be on the biggest and best team. There's no doubt about that. So where do I see myself in 5 years? Being a color commentator or the ringside reporter or the play-by-play guy. I mean, or the host. Like, I'm trying to say there isn't a job that I can't do, that I don't want to do, that I don't feel I've sharpened my tools and pushed everything out of the way and just made the blinders on and made my narrow focus to try to go for it. And the journey is great. And the journey is frustrating, but it's great. But I don't think I've gotten that opportunity yet to be on a main team or a lead team and have that opportunity to look around and say, we might be the best team in the world right now in this era. And what do I hope? Where do I want to be in 5 years? I want to be in a spot where I could say comfortably, not on a podcast looking into the camera, but to calm my competitive heart and the dreams and goals and the aspirations I have mixed with the opportunities I've been given by God, second chances. I'm living a blessed life to be able to look in that mirror and say, yeah, I might be the best in the world at what I do. That's what drives me. That's, to me, is winning a championship. And if I get there, all the other stuff's going to be there too. And it's going to be fine. And, the money, the whatever else, put, the support for the family. That's the ultimate driver in reality, right? For sure. That's the ultimate driver. But if this all went away tomorrow, I'd still be filling that ultimate driver in whatever job was available in there, door dashing or not. I would have done that. But in terms of the things I want to do, I hope Morning Combat's still alive and fresh and well, or if not Morning Combat, maybe we're doing something different. I want to do something super high. I got a dream to be, we haven't really seen yet for, inside the NBA, the great TNT show, Shaq, Kenny, all that, right? The institution in sports broadcasting in so many ways. And everyone's trying to be that show to some degree, or like an MK, which is probably deeply modeled after like Pardon the Interruption in reality, right? We all want to be that at the end of the day. I want to see an inside the NBA of combat in a studio after the big fights, irregardless of promotional and network connection. And I want to be on that too. I want to, damn right, I want to be on that. I don't know if there's ever going to be an MMA beat again, but if there's something like that, I'd probably want to be on that too. I think I'll write as long as, people will pay me to write, but I'm a broadcaster. That's who I'm trying to be. That's who I want to be. So, I would trade everything for that. There's no doubt about it. And I'm coming. I think you hear me knocking. I think I'm coming in, Took me a long time to believe that, to be able to say that. I hope it's my time. I'm coming. I care about this. I want this. I love this. So that's where I see myself professionally. And, whether it's morning combat, whether it's the BCX, I want to be sitting in front of a microphone telling bad jokes and talking about 90s NBA too. So hopefully you guys are still with me on that. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Matthew G. Thank you, brother. It's great to see you. Appreciate you. Love you, BC. Yeah, right back at you in like a very platonic distance type way, but it's an intense one. Believe that. I sent an email to MK for Luke to rate a tat. Let me know if you guys got it. It's wild. Cheering on you and MK take it to the moon. I mean, look, thank you, Matthew. If part of my 5-year plan is taking MK to where I think it could go, like what, why are Luke and I still doing this? Oh, we need a paycheck. Well, paycheck's pretty good, right? Thank you. But I want to see this show go to where from the day we signed it, I wasn't thinking of like, man, I hope, we can make this work here. I'm thinking, how far can we take this? Is this a TV show one day? Is this a pregame show before a fight? What is this, right? And we've been a lot of different things. I'm still with it. I'm sure Luke is still with it because we believe we can do exactly what you said. Take this thing to its next level. So in 5 years, if that's part of my portfolio and that's what I'm doing, then that will be mission accomplished in that regard. Believe that. We're going to look into this email. Thank you. morningcombat@gmail.com is the email address as we've talked about. And Alan, thank you. That's yeah, I'm coming on. I mean, here's the thing. If you're coming on, come on. That dude was right. That husky Canadian was right back in the day. All right. I mean, Alan W's been coming on in a big way there too, but we will check out your email. Hopefully we'll get that rate that tat in fan subs this week. I'll talk to the powers that be behind the scenes. I know them well. And that's the thing. We're just trying to turn the power back on the morning combat. It's a slow build. Everything we said it would be in January, it didn't become, but it ain't dead. All right. And that's the story. That's why I like boxing. We got off the canvas. We're still fighting. Sometimes we're fighting each other, but we're still fighting. All right. We're trying to make this. I'm trying to be great. That's the truth. Robert Rowan, what do you got from? Thank you, brother. BC coming for Professor Salt and Pepper's 200,000. Hey, congrats to Luke on that, by the way. What's that Luke old axiom he used to say? Just keep chopping the tree or keep, hitting the thing until whatever it was. I think some of you know what I'm talking about. I mean, Luke was like day one-ish on this type of stuff, and he's been hammering away for a long ass time. So he got to that point. You got to hear some gross-ish story, I'm sure. But shout out to Luke on the 200K. I respect that. I mean, just like I say, like people are like, what do you think about it's gonna happen with Ariel? I think this will be, I don't know, but shout out to Ariel for getting this uncrowned thing. Like, swing big, dude. You went after it. I don't know where the BCX levels out one day. We got 8,000 subscribers. We had 8,000 weirdos in this club. I'm down for that. All right. That's what there is. I mean, we all want to get hired. We want to get clicks. We want to get money. We want to get, like I always said, like there's some level of fame lust that we're all sort of after to some degree. Although I want to still be able to go to the grocery store and pick my nose and yell at my kids and not have it, not have that on someone's video camera. So luckily I'm never going to get to that point. But Alan, what else you got? Wow. I mean, Alan W, get my boy Reggie Jackson something nice. Unreal, Alan. Appreciate you. I do believe that. Reggie, this one's for Reggie. This one's for Alan W. All right, a real gentleman in this game. The Wong man. Thank you so much. But yeah, I'm not coming for 200K anytime soon, though. Right? We're gonna build because sometimes, as much as we want to talk about the money and the fame and all the other BS, is it better to have 500,000 fans, but they're mostly passive or they're whatever, or like 3,000 fans, but they're intense as shit. I mean, there's a lot of pluses with the former, but that latter is give me the passion, give me the intensity, give me people that want to be here as I talk in circles, drinking weird green drinks. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're building on this side of the tracks. It doesn't mean you can't be there on Thursdays and give your shekels to that side too. All right. Thank you so much. Lazy bit. His name is Wong and his money's strong. I think, I'm going to have to do a deep dive here on the real LNW. All right. LNW, are you camera friendly? Can we have you on next week's chat? All right. Reach out to me, please. Okay. Nobody wants to know more about the Wong man than me. In some ways, to get to know the guy that will inevitably be removing my liver from a abandoned building tub at some point, but also got a lot of respect for you there. So shout out. I love when people reach out and they're like, BC, man, remember I saw you at that London show and you said this and I said that. I'm like, man, I mean, I really can't. People say what, I talked about this with Long Island Luke on the wellness check where he was like, BC, what's your favorite MK moment? And I stammered and then eventually spit out after naming a few others that it really was that London show. We had no business going to London with this stupid podcast and selling out 500 seats. That's because of this fan base. That's because of this community. And the people afterwards were just like they were in Vegas for the 3 Margarita Day. They were incredibly nice and sincere. A little weird, but just beautifully weird. You know what I mean? Wonderful. Do the work to keep yourself open to other people's magic, right? That's what we're working with this year. Okay. Wow. No government names, no information. If Alan's like a crypto dude, then we will leave him alone. But keep being you, Alan. We do appreciate you right there completely. King Alan W. I heard that Alan W. also checks out the Main Card Minute podcast with Luke Nocita of Long Island fame. So check out that as well. There's a lot of that's the thing that maybe that we're doing the best here with this MK thing. We don't always get it right, but we're building a community of people, of creators, people that work on the show. I mean, I chatted with Aaron for 39 minutes. You might watch that tomorrow. You might. It was weird. I'm telling you, spoiler alert. Lazy Bed, the 50th episode going to be Alan W, me and Tacoma wearing luchador mats. See, that's a good gimmick right there. Where if Alan was like, look, my life's too hot right now for people to find out who the real LNW is. But if he's like, I'll come on with like a half dimly lit face and like, speaking like a voice machine over. So you sound like, rah, rah, that's a good gimmick right there. That's some Dateline NBC stuff. I'm down with that. Let's just not go like the Chris Hansen side of that. Thank you very much. All right. Keep it going here. What else you got, Mikey? Thank you, Street. Appreciate you. Exotic Adrian Street over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you rather go on a trug walk with Luke or a ring wog to fight him? Fucking or fighting, it's all the same, right? The shout out to Bradley Noel on that one. I guess I'd rather fight him over the former, right? I don't know. I mean, what would it look like? Imagine if Luke and I no training camp. Well, I got to throw in the no training camp because I'm going to try to play against where I think his stamina is at. But if we had a legit training camp, I don't know. Are we just automatically heavyweights, or can I try to claim? Can I make him? Can I pull a Gervonta and make him come down in weight? That's what I should do to his Ryan Garcia. But what would we be in, like a headgear, like one of those charity sparring matches, right? I guess that's what I'm going to be up against. This is going to be a tough challenge for me. That guy's bigger. I mean, he probably hits really hard, right? Can I get him? Can I gas him? Can I rope-a-dope him? Can I just open the cap on that gas tank and just swim without getting wet for as long as possible? The competitor in me likes to talk about that, but I'm like 46 and old now though. But I did go hard in the gym this morning, so shout out to me. There you go on that one. But no, I'm not. We're not. Despite the love of the MK audience, that one day maybe 500,000 subscribers, that we would like Tony and Angela and Who's the Boss. Finally. No, that's I'm a married. That's disgusting. I'm a married man, and I mean, could that guy do us a good decency and dye his hair one time? You know what I mean? No. What do I look like, a BBL? No. No. All right. That's it. That's where we're at here. Okay. Devin Tuck, thank you so much for your service. In the end, greater legacy. Gracie, I'm thinking you're talking about Hoist here, or Nurmagomedov. Much different legacies, to be fair. Hoist Gracie's so much tied into the pioneer aspect, the early dominance. He was not only first, he was best and dominated. But, you know, he did have a weird second half of his career. The sport caught up to him in so many ways, just as much as the drug testing did at times, too. I got to go Khabib, no doubt about it on here. And Khabib does have a complicated legacy because we didn't get to see all of it. But Joe San, wow, at Luke for the win. Wow. Okay, here we go. That's disgusting. Thank you, Alan. Like, you can hipster argument Khabib as the GOAT, but it's not really. We didn't get to see enough of it, but like he had the perfect career almost, and he executed it, and he was a badass. And those 2 years with that knee injury didn't even slow him down. So from what we got to see, oh, you're talking about the whole family. All right. Thank you, Devin. Thank you. Appreciate you on that. Just, you're like, Campbell, stop rambling here. Let's get right into it. Again, you're also talking about different legacies, different times. The Nurmagomedovs have a lot more to do to get to the Gracie level, but is it possible, and are we counting Islam as part of the family? That's a key question. Because it's very possible that Usman Nurmagomedov ends up fighting for a UFC title and maybe having a shot of winning it. And Umar might be the bantamweight champion next, for all we know. So we're talking about something insane. I guess we have to include Islam in that tree, in that family. Well, if they all end up as UFC champions, then that's gonna be a powerful statement. And maybe we're not counting some of the fringe cousins, the Zubaira dude, right? Remember, was that the dude that jumped the cage at 229 and fought Connor? I mean, not everybody lived up to, just like the Gracies too. There's a few. I mean, there's a Crone Gracie out there. At least he made fun fights. At least Crone made fun fights. But it's still Gracie right now, not just the pioneer side, but I mean, Hickson was an absolute badass. Damn. Yeah. But the Nurmagomedovs could get there if this thing keeps going in the direction that it looks like it might. This is a special group of fighters. Very special. Just made differently, just different and tough as shit and well-rounded and about that life, not just the training, but like the sportsman side of it, the crazy competitive side of it. There's a purity to how they operate within the space. I'm not, again, not pulling a Luke here and throwing the asterisk of, yeah, but what are their political beliefs? I don't even care. All right. I'm just talking about like how they operate themselves in the space. Let's separate the art from the artists. And I like a lot of these dudes, at least the personalities that we see from a distance in that greater Nurmagomedov clan. But that thing could end up being the go-to family name. And so, yeah, Islam, you're part of that family. Thank you. I've seen, that's the adoption ceremony's all set. There you go. All right. Yeah, where is Reggie? Thank you, Alan, for your interest in him. Reg? So he is the kind of cat, by the way. My wife pointed this out last night and then proved it. If you call his name, he'll not only arrive, he'll arrive vocally. Like, he'll announce himself that he's here. He's just a yeah. So he doesn't get down for Halloween, and he hates costumes, and he hates getting messed with, to be fair. My dog, Molly, the big brown one, you may have seen her on Morning Combat documentary number 7 there, The Love of My Life. She gets dressed up. She's already got a Halloween costume. She's got many costumes. She loves that life. That's not, Reggie had a great October. In fact, my wife, again, was talking about this yesterday. He's really maturing out of his a-hole era. You know what I'm saying? I think he's about 4 now. He's really starting to kind of come into his own and maybe even trying to be the family cat. And she also pointed out that while he has the most love for me, and it's not even close, he also torments me constantly. Like, he knows, if I'm not giving the attention he's looking for, he knows how to I got all these puffy panels on the ceiling to keep the sound in this office. and he's determined to climb and pull them down, and he hates them. He stares at them all the time. So he has this route that he can take by climbing a bunch of records and then jumping onto an air conditioner and then, being in position. And he's a daredevil. And we scream at each other a lot, but he's nice to everybody else now for the most part. He's turning a new leaf. He's a spectacular human being. Yeah, we can't see that. Hey, hang with me, Luke. No, see that. All right, you know how I get down with the Molly pillow. I mean, it really was the greatest gift I've ever received, to be fair. And this is still exactly what she looks like. So yeah, that's what we're talking about here. The best dog ever, part Doberman, part German Shepherd, part Border Terrier. Just the best thing that's ever happened there. All right, let's keep it going here. Let's keep the rolling here. We probably got another half hour here of this fun and games. Let's go in and out here. That's how we like to do it. That guy, appreciate you. Thank you. Just bought a used car from Chatri Sidyong Tong. Shall I be worried? Yeah, I mean, we always say that, like, they're all used car salesmen, the promoters, but like, who's the promoter that you'd most be willing to buy a used car directly from? I used to always say Tom Loeffler. Tom Loeffler's a great dude. Dana loves him, by the way, and he should. He's a great dude. Eddie Hearn, because like I know he's gonna screw me, but like it puts on a song and dance and almost makes you feel good, right? But yeah, I don't think I'd buy one from Chatri. I don't trust a lot of what's coming out on that side, but they do make some fun. I mean, they got that card coming up a week from the so it's not this weekend, next weekend. They got Anatoly Malikin coming back against Rugrug Umar Kane. That's a wild fight. That's a weird ass wild fight, and I can't wait. I can't wait for that. I think we're having Rich Franklin on the program coming up on Morning Combat as well. So we're going to get into that right there. Thank you very much. Long Island Luke, thanks for populating these parts there. Thank you so much, Cheng. Heard any good Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo stories? No, not so much. Not so much. That older guard probably could have given me some of those stories. I was lucky enough when I came into the game that like some of George Campbell was still lingering, author of the Four Kings, before he passed away, was still sort of lingering press side, ringside at a bunch of events. So I rubbed doubles with him a bit, and some of the older legends were still kind of around that side of it. But no, people aren't telling Frankie Carbo's story these days, but it is wild. The various changes that boxing has gone through in terms of who have been the power players, and from the Mafia through Don King through Al Heyman, who was behind the scenes always, to Turkey Al-Sheikh now. It's so part of why we love this absurd and ridiculous game. And I don't know if I would ever change that, though. Like, as much as I would love like this sanitized, organized sport, you got to be honest with yourself. Part of what we love, most of what we love about this game, is all of what we hate about it. It's just, but no, I don't necessarily. Two Changs have great stories in that regard. But you know what? I've become a bit of isolator on the road. Part of that is because often on the road, I'm juggling multiple jobs and I'm busy. So I just prefer being back in the room writing. Sometimes the anxiety can get high, especially if I've got broadcasting work that week where I kind of just keep to myself. But I do miss the days of just kind of when you go to Vegas for a big fight and you go set up shop in the media room and just spend 9 hours there and run into everyone in the boxing business at once. There's something fun to that. You still get that when we do Radio Row, like usually the Friday, the day before the fight, or sometimes on Thursday. There'll just be this window maybe around a press conference where you just never know who's going to walk in that door, which is exciting when you're doing a live show like we've often done with Morning Combat there. But those are when the best stories are told by the best people. And you see, sometimes when the younger in the moment fighters like a Teofimo or something comes in and they're just talking up a storm and there's a big group around him interviewing. Those are some fun, exciting times. But no, people aren't really telling Bernie Carbo. People aren't even telling those stories though that much anymore. Let's keep it flowing here. Two Chains back at it. BC Luke said he would chug a margarita when he hit 200,000, but he didn't do it. You got to bring him a margarita next time in studio. I think Luke would be down for that. Luke's idea, by the way, was for us to go in the Halloween costumes, and I think it worked out great. And I hope to to do stuff like that more often. And but if you believe that Luke promised you something for that milestone, and again, respect to that 200K, and he only gave you a shit stain story, then maybe he does. Maybe I'll buy him in New York City. I'll go into a store and get like a pre-made, ready to go margarita. That guy loves margaritas, you know. Do you want a margarita? Yeah, maybe we'll try that in that regard. But I think Luke's down for that. We've chugged beers, we've eaten hot dogs, we've done a lot of weird things in MK. We got to get our own place though. We got to get our own dirtbag motel, you know, our own home, like the RS, like the bomb shelter was. Man, we hated that place, and now we miss that place so much. Long Island Luke knows that is, as Luke often says, it was a shithole, but it was our shithole. Or maybe I say that a lot. But Luke said something like that too. Yeah, there is something special about you know, it was gross and weird, but it was ours. It was pretty good. All right, what do we got here? Never Nar. Shadiest Connecticut restaurant you DoorDash from? Oh, that's a great question. You know, I had that stretch, as I've mentioned before, particularly early in my DoorDash time, like the first couple weeks where it was just new and fresh. And I mean, believe me, I never would have done it if it wasn't fun, if I didn't get something from it. It was a rush. And there was a stretch in that first 2 weeks where I was like, I don't care. Yeah, I'll go to the center of Hartford at 10 p.m. I'll go into the projects, I'll go into the neighborhood. So, you know, I definitely wanted to get a feel of every situation and every scenario there. And then, you know, quickly you learn I never should have done that. I shouldn't have put my life on the line for a $4 Subway order. But while I may not have the specific sketchiest single restaurant, there's just, as expected in a state capital city, almost notoriously known for high crime, that you could go to certain sections, certain neighborhoods where, you know, it's a trip. They had this okay, I'll nail it. In Hartford, not far from Hartford Hospital, they had a Subway that was inside of a gas station that was in a gnarly area. And going into there, you know, you start talking to yourself like, is this Subway sandwich worth my life? You know what I mean? Like there's some conversations you have to have with people on the way in and out of there that it was aggressive. It was interesting. So I stopped doing that. I promised my family I wouldn't do that anymore. But yeah, I mean, it really in totality didn't actually dash that much, but it became a nice fun thing where it's like, you know, I'm not really doing anything. Let me go check that out. But sometimes on like holidays are the best for door dashing because you can get the most money there and the roads are empty, like Super Bowl Sunday, Valentine's Day, stuff like that. But every once in a while I'll get that itch of just getting out there and just driving like a maniac and, you know, giving people what they deserve, hot food. All right. That's what they deserve. Thank you very much. Do an episode live from an Arbys, says Dave. Yeah, I'd be willing to. You know, in fact, we don't have the budgets these days, but that's the kind of stuff on MK on the road that we should be doing more often, like room service diaries live from Vegas Arbys, right? Just see what happens. See who walks in the shot. Again, asking yourself, you know, is this worth my life putting it on the line? But there it is right there for you. You got anything else, Mikey? Best duo on NBA Jam. Great question, Lazy Bed. Great question. All right. Played it forever, not just in the arcades, not just at Hoyt's Movie Theater in Waterbury, Connecticut before sneaking into movies, not just on Sega Genesis when it finally came out and it was epic. I even brought back the Sega NBA Jam when my kids were small about a decade ago and we played the crap out of it. So the best team, and I've long debated this because I always loved the Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin combo a lot. You didn't have a lot of size though, or shot blocking in that, but you had speed and shooting. But that duo head to head would still lose to Schrempf and Sean Kemp. So probably that left Schrempf and Sean Kemp were just perfect because Kemp is going to be absolutely unstoppable from a dunking standpoint. And, you know, Schrempf, who he was in real life, is just that Swiss Army knife who can do it all, can nail threes, but on a wild game like that is still big enough and tough enough to defend. I always loved that duo. When you got to the point, though, where it was like, you knew a restaurant or a movie theater that had the championship edition where you can sub out the players before the game. And, you know, that's when it got next level, as was the times where ridiculously obscure players would randomly show up, like that stretch where the Nuggets were horrible in the early 90s, and Mike Isolino got a spot on NBA. Mike Isolino from St. Francis of Pennsylvania is a sub 6 foot point guard who could hit threes. That guy got an NBA Jam because they didn't have anybody else. Like, that's wild. That's wild. All right, bonus question, best hidden character. That's interesting that you asked that, Lazy Bed, because I was trying to, that's all we did on the Sega version of that, was try to, get the codes, or how would you get the codes? Was it magazines and early internet, or would you have to achieve a certain point to unlock it? But, inevitably it would be like developers of the game that you didn't know, but then there were celebrities. I'm trying to think, who was the, anybody hit me in the live section of this chat? I want to see who were the celebrities that you could unlock. Was it a rapper? Was it like Ice Cube or somebody? Am I making that up? Bill Clinton? Somebody saying that? Yeah. Bill Clinton, definitely. I remember unlocking that. But yeah, anytime you can get to that point and you can get some obscure person and they're doing the craziest dunks over people, it got wild. But that game was so good. And I always believe that Arch Rivals inspired. Like, you don't have NBA Jam until you had Arch Rivals, because Arch Rivals was NBA Jam, only you can knock people out with punches, which is great. Which I guess in NBA Jam you could. There was a physical element where you can knock people down as well, but it wasn't as gratuitous in that regard. But yeah, Epic, one of the greatest video games of all time. Maybe not as good as NHL 94 on Sega Genesis, but pretty damn close. Yeah, good question there, Lazy Bed. All right, let's see what else we're dreaming up here. MMA Interesting Prospects asks, if George Masvidal returns to UFC, what should be next for him? Considering his age pushing 40, I think it should be either a BMF matchup that isn't absurd on paper. And I know he was pushing in recent interviews to try to come back and fight Max for that. And while that would not be my first choice for Max at all, I also wouldn't hate it, because at least Jorge was the original BMF, but he never got to defend it, I guess, in a sense, because he went right from there to the title level and pay-per-view headlining level. I would accept that, but I wouldn't want it. Well, who would I want to see? I wanted to see him in old guy fights. I'd want to see him against Poirier, or I'd want to see him, that's like the perfect type of aging guys from a smaller weight class moving up. Or, that's exactly where I'd want to see that. I don't want to see him against wrestlers. I want to see him against old action guys. I don't want to say Tony Ferguson now, but like Tony Ferguson 2.5 years ago. Yeah, that's who I'm talking about. That level. Completely. But not Tony now, not Nick Diaz. Please get that crap away from me. Thank you. Alan back in. No, Alan, thank you. You didn't have to be so kind. All right. I would have liked you anyway, as John Sebastian once saying. Your dream team boxing commentary team, including yourself, plus announcer and in-ring interviewer. Are we talking about of today's talent, or are we talking about all time? All right, let me think about this. So if I'm going to concoct, let's talk about active then. If I'm going to concoct a team right now and put myself in, dang. All right. It's like, do I want to be the color commentator, or do I want to be the ringside reporter? The hook on the ringside reporter part, obviously, is the post-fight interview, especially in a main event situation. I got to do that for one pay-per-view for Showtime. It was Benavidez versus Andrade, and then I got to do that for the Masvidal Diaz. And there's a rush with that, and a responsibility, I believe, to do that job right. That I do believe it's an art when a lot of people look at that, the Jim Gray role, as like anyone can do it or not that important. No, I think there's an art there. But the reality is I want to be calling these fights. So I'm going to sit in the non-fighter color analyst chair. If Alan W is saying all time, then we're going to put Jim Lampley as the play-by-play guy, because he is the greatest of all time. I just as easily could have said, by the way, my favorite play-by-play guy ever, Barry Tompkins, who I love and was so happy to finally work next to. And also Steve Albert in prime early to mid-90s Showtime run. I mean, you don't have to level it off at in the mid-90s. I mean, he called Corrales Castillo in 2005 and was just as great then. But if you don't put Lampley in there, you're crazy. So it's Lamps, me. Oh, man. Can I? Okay, if we're going all-time, then I can't sit in these chairs. I'm going to become the Jim Gray on the all-time list there for this purpose of this concoction in my head that you're asking me. So put me in the interview role. exclusively. I get to work with Lamps on play-by-play. Dang. I mean, you're gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna reunite Prime Merchant too. I'm gonna put Larry Merchant in there. I'm really gonna do that. Yeah. I mean, love me some Al Bernstein. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Jim, Larry. Oh man, is it a hipster pick or is it because he was great? Because you could put so many different people in that fighter role, and you can take so many of the people that worked with Jim and Larry in that role, Prime Roy or whoever. George Foreman was so good, even though he was polarizing in the '90s. But I love me some Emmanuel Stewart in that third role. And I know I just recreated like one part of the HBO Prime lineup there of the '90s and early 2000s, but would I be wrong? Would I be wrong working with Jim, Larry, and Emmanuel Stewart right there? And Emmanuel's just filling in the oh my gods, every once in a while. And you put me in the ring. And all right, so who's gonna host? Let's put Kellerman in the host position, the host analyst chair, next to hmm, that's where I'll throw Al Bernstein in because he could play a few different positions and always has. Imagine him and Kellerman in that role hosting the event. I'd be down. I'd be super down for that on this all-star dream team that I threw myself in there because Alan made me. So thank you so much. But yeah, so many great people that do it today. So many people that I've worked with Morrow to was it one? No, a couple times where I was the ringside reporter. Never got to work with Morrow yet, where I was the analyst next to him. Always felt like we could potentially have some magic there. It would be fun to see. Tim Bradley is a guy I love a lot. Was always my favorite interview. Would love to call a fight with him one day. I think Sergio Mora is really good, even with he gets polarizing with the Twitter comments sometimes. But I always wanted been itching to work with him. I have worked with Todd Grisham before and love his charisma and his spirit in so many ways. But yeah, I mean, Andre Ward might have been our best modern fighter analyst. I never got a chance to call a fight with him. That would be something as well. These are just some names. I used to be able to work with Sean Porter on the NBC series, and he was so good, so welcoming, so caring, just a great human being and a real fun guy to sit next to and bounce analyzations with and sound bites with. Nothing I could throw at Sean Porter, he couldn't spin it back to me. So that's when you're building something special chemistry wise. So big fan of that guy. I know he bounces around a lot, and you see him a lot in the zone, but I hope he gets an elite sort of job that he's looking for too long term. I mean, that's what you all want in this industry. That guy jumping in, appreciate you saying you got to set up a BCE PO box for us diehard fans. I can do that. What are we going to mail each other? Nude photos of each other? Alex says BC best vacation spots for a vacation with the missus. I rank everything. That's why I always say the High Fidelity movie with John Cusack when it came out. They're like, BC, that's you. You rank everything. I always rank that with my wife all the time. I say our best vacation was the one we just did, largely London, couple days in Paris. Amazing, absolutely amazing. I think my wife prefers more Caribbean at its peak, but now she's really into the idea of finally exploring Europe. Not cheap, not easy to do, but if I had to say, yeah, I'd say the best we did was London so far, but I think we're going to shatter that as we continue to see things. But as I always tell her, I'm not done seeing this country or particularly the West Coast and all. I've told you about my national park nerddom before, and damn, there's so many I want to get to and see. Little talk sometimes about a potential Cali trip and maybe a Joshua Tree stops in my future. So that'd get me fired up in that regard. But yeah, some of the best times with the wife have been big Caribbean fans. So we played it out, but we had some great stops there. I'm a big Mexico guy. Big Mexico. That's where I went on my honeymoon in Tulum. Big Mexico guy. So hopefully I'll get back there again for sure. Tu Chang saying, you see those Yankees. So that was epically ridiculous. The game 4 of the World Series, the foul ball. Was that a foul ball down the right field line in the second inning? Betts going up for it. And the Yankee fans, the 2 season ticket holders there, one holding the arm and prying open the glove, the other one grabbing the free arm and holding it back. It's the most ridiculous we've seen. And we've seen a lot in big games, from the Bartman Cubs moment there in 2003 all the way down to Jeffrey Mayer and the Yankees. Was that 96 with that fly ball against the Orioles? This was far more ridiculous and gratuitous, and I understand why these 2 fans were ejected. And it's hilariously lame to see the post-fight comments or the post-game comments that ESPN got from these 2 guys in a bar, by the way, where the guy was like, the main guy was like, that we protect this wall for this team, and we have these conversations ahead of time that we always will. Luke Nocita just slide in saying Manich was at the game. That could have been Manich right there. But then, crazy twist of fate, find out that main guy is from Connecticut, and Gronk was on some morning show, Rob Gronkowski, where they showed that highlight, and Gronk's like, oh, I know that dude. I went to the University of Arizona with him. He was a club hockey player. And that's a random occurrence of events right there. But that was some aggressive stuff right there. I'm not surprised. I mean, some of the craziest things I have seen is the Yankees Stadium bleachers in the late 90s. I mean, it's the kind of thing where I don't even think people believe me when I tell them the stories of the debauchery that happened there, and how easy it was to get your ass kicked there, and how it was, quarantined off from the rest of the stadium and had its own jail. And it was just, I mean, you couldn't even wear the Fred Durst red Yankees cap there. Somebody would take it off your head and throw it on the field. Those were crazy days. I know I remember going back to the bleachers, after 9/11 and years later, and thinking it was the same vibe and feeling, and it wasn't. But them people are hardcore. Them people are crazy. You don't mess with people from Greater New York City, just like you don't mess with people from Southern California too, as I found out on the Masvidal Diaz tour. All right, we got a few more here. Let's close strong here. Let's close strong. Lazy bed, steamed, grilled, boiled, or pan fried. How do you take your dog? Definitely not boiled. All right. Definitely not boiled. Your other options are pleasing in their own way. I mean, steamed when done right is absolutely tremendous. So is pan fried, man. But there's something about the outdoor grill, the added taste and flavor that gives. Yeah, I'm gonna go with grilled. Sometimes steamed can taste better, sometimes, rarely, sometimes, but I'm gonna go grilled right there. Man, it's nothing like a good ass hot dog, as long as you're willing to forget what's in it and what it's doing to you, particularly your liver. Thank you, Lazy Bed. Alan W sliding right back in unnecessarily, and we appreciate you. BC and my boy Rafe need to do a live fight card watch along soon this year. That is possible. Let me pick Raphael's brain and see good old Rafe and see if he's down for that. It'd have to be the type of fight that I'm not already spoken for from the standpoint of CBS Sports and my editorial duties there. But sometimes you can get a good mid-level fight where maybe that isn't the case, and I'm free and we can set something like that up. It would be something. It would be something. Rafe's one of the best in this game. I'm glad to see him back in front of a microphone, even if it's us cracking jokes, putting our hands in the box. By the way, I was really close today with Mikey figuring out how to get the old soundboard back hooked up and playing. And then through a confluence of events that weren't my fault involving iPad Apple updates, I hit a roadblock. But we will see some form of that make a comeback very soon. It's coming. The old game, the old feels are coming back here between me and Rafe. It's a fun time. Thank you for watching what we're doing and appreciating it. Anything else on the way out here? You guys have been great. Jesse says, do you collect anything, BC? If you do, what's your coolest item? I try not to collect anything because I did a little bit of that in my youth, and baseball cards like everybody else or anything. And then I sort of fell into realizing the addiction level of that those roads can take you, and took a step back. The thing I've proudly collected, though, is my 90s NBA replica jersey collection, and particularly aimed at the most obscure players possible. And it's a collection I believe in and fight for to keep it around because I wear it when I play. You know, if you're going to play pickup hoops or play in a, over 40 pickup league like I do, what am I going to wear? A t-shirt? No, I'm going to wear a jersey. And particularly, I'm going to wear from my fantastically weird collection. I've got Cherokee Parks on the Mavericks, Yinka Dare on the Nets, Sean Bradley on the 76ers when he wore number 76. I've got a Bobby Hurley Kings home white jersey with the cursive and the purple road one. Greg Graham, the 1993 Sixers lottery pick out of the University of Indiana. I've got his jersey. I'm talking just weird, random ones that just, that's the obscurity I'm into. That's the collection I'm into. I got the Chris Mullin Dream Team 1 jersey. Big fan of that one. I almost bought the Montrose number 0 Celtics jersey from Alex Walkuski, and I missed that window, and I should have bought it in hindsight. I think he also had the Celtics Dominique Wilkins jersey, which is stupid and weird too. Oh, I've got the Chauncey Billups Celtics jersey from the first half of his rookie year before Patino traded him. That's one of my favorite ones too. I'm weird like that. Do I collect anything else? Now records. And it's not a collection like a look how much I have, or I'm not trying not to be a completist. I'm just, doing it for the passion and the love. But as I don't know, is it lame or weird, or is it just perfect? It's the perfect obsession for me. It really is. My dad was like that too. His thing was cassettes and then CDs. And I'm happy that he donated his record collection to me finally, like while he's still alive, because he knew I would enjoy it. And he had the absolute best late 60s, early 70s rock collection that I'm proud to play. But that's my sweet spot at night. That's my, that's when I'm in my zone, right? That's when I'm just obsessed. I'm obsessed with late 60s psychedelic rock and early 70s, mid 70s, everything. I'm obsessed. Those are the areas I'm obsessed. I don't really have any other thing you would call a great collector's item. I got what's cool? I got a lot of UFC used to give out to media at the big events like 200 or whatever. Like they give out the full book that you can buy as a fan, the media thing. And those things, I got a stack of some really good cards. Those are fun to look back on. But no, I don't. I try to collect memories and relationships. Yeah, that's it. That's my code. All right. Matt Osamulski. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. What's the fastest mile you ever ran? In 2005, at the age of 27, 10 years after my lone running season, running cross country for Naugatuck High School, I bit down huge on the running bug. Huge. Was training for a marathon and everything. I ran in this weekly road race series that they used to have maybe they still have in Roxbury, Connecticut. And every Saturday morning, there's a different race, but it's a different distance, a different terrain. Sometimes it's road racing, sometimes it's trail running and all this other stuff. And they have distances going from a mile to a marathon. But I used to run a lot of those 6-7 mile races up through crazy terrain or up giant hills. And one time they had a mile race. It was actually the morning of my sister's wedding. That's how I remember it. And I ran a 5:56. And I think my best mile time in school previously was like 10 minutes because I didn't care back then. But that was the most pain I've ever felt in my life finishing that race, but it was so worth it to prove that I could do it. That year was all about me proving that that I could get away from that hot dog life, that I could physically do anything I put my mind to. And I made a lot of great strides here. Alan W. Wow, bro. Wow. I mean, this crypto you're sharing with me. Thank you, sir. What's the slowest mile you ever ran? Yeah. I mean, remember in like 8th grade or 9th grade, every year they do that thing. I never took that seriously. I always ran like 10, 12-minute miles. My best, so real quick, if you care, you probably don't, but, I joined cross country my senior year, like literally only to fool around because my best friends were the captains. First practices were like smoking cigarettes in the woods and like not even running, like just completely looked at it as like, let me haze freshmen and like try to meet girls and stuff. But I caught on halfway through, and it was only because the coach like gave up on me, sort of like, okay, you're a clown, just get out of my way, leave me alone. And that lit the competitive fire in me. And then, so for the second half of that season, I was like suddenly trying and caring. And I went from running like 30-minute 5Ks, screwing around, to like actually trying. And I ran I think the last race that year I ran a 22 even, which, is not a great time, but considering where I'd come from in that short period, I remember thinking like, I think I could have been, if I had tried earlier and if I'd cared, I think I'm wired to, I would have been great at that. I would have been a great runner. So now to see my kids be great runners in high school, it brings me so much joy because they're so determined and so focused and driven. And like one of my sons before the last race of the year, we were eating dinner and he was like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a PR tomorrow. And the PR time was like 3.5 minutes better than his, best time. And we were like, sure, you can physically like even say that and pull that off. And, I shouldn't even said that because he's so driven, and he went out and he shattered that time. And I was like, did it hurt? He was like, every second, but it was worth it. And I was like, I'm the proudest dad in the world right now. You know what I mean? Like those kids go after it, and I'm hopefully that I passed down that spirit to them, maybe. But no, I wasn't an epic runner, but I think I had big potential if I would have. I was a donk. I was a donk for most of my life, to be very honest with you. Some would say I still am, but there we go. That's the best 2 hours of my week. Poet Kane jumping in last minute there with the devilish amount of money. Thank you. What's your favorite song or type of music to play while door dashing? Wow. While door dashing, I was preferring upbeat music, and I had gone on a Red Hot Chili Peppers stretch, particularly during that DoorDash stretch. So I'm talking about like the By the Way album and the Californication album in particular. That was fantastic DoorDash music without question, as was Deep Purple, which I was also deep diving at that moment. Not just that, what is that Mark III era, the prime lineup with Ian Gillan and all them, but I even get into the David Coverdale era a bit after that as well. So yeah, that's why I'm rocking out Poet Kane. That's not my favorite song or type of music for me is going to be rock, going to be psychedelic rock. But I'll float around. Thank you. We'll all float on again. Okay. That's it. This is BC. I appreciate you. All right. Appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you so much for being willing to hear me talk in circles on here, and for sharing your support. It means a lot. It really does. I'm trying to, like all you, I'm trying to get up the next morning, put a smile on my face, and get the heck after it. All right. I got goals and dreams. Now I'm just trying to find the ways and means, but we're putting it all together, brick by brick, step by step. I hope you guys are doing great in your own journeys. I hope you're taking care of yourself up there. Okay. Fuzzy, right back at you. Thank you so much. It's a select taste. You got to be into 90s NBA. Okay. In long-winded circles, but take care of yourself, guys. Enjoy not only the fights this weekend, and this is Rose Aaron. It's a good fight. Enjoy Morning Combat this Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on the YouTubes. Luke and I back. We're back. I think we got Rich Franklin this Friday. That should be a good chat. But we're back. We're back with a bang. Okay. We're gonna pave the road for you this weekend about what is to come. Check out what's going on the channel. Seriously, if you don't know about Keyshawn Davis, like we gotta get up to speed fast. He's coming the heck on in the lightweight division of boxing right now. Calling out Tank, calling out everybody. Watch that interview. We got Derek Lewis coming. We got Jay Aaron tomorrow. We're going to talk about his controversial Morning Combat exit. We're going to talk about his ridiculous career of almost being famous a lot, but ultimately being Jay Aaron. All right. That's what's going to happen right there. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Luke Nocita. One day at a time, folks. We're going to get there. All right. We can do this. Okay. Take care of yourself up there. Put your mental health first. You're not being selfish if you do so. You're being sound. You're being right on. All right. Your people in your life deserve the best of you, but more importantly, you deserve the best of you. So take care of this first. All right. That's all I got to say this week. Alan W, Tacoma, Aroma, all the bros. Thanks for hanging out. Be gentle when you remove my organs one day. And yeah, that's about all I got. We out.